Jiwoo looked at the pups who were now playing with each other, tumbling and wrestling with obvious joy. Besides, the process of trying Wilga 12 days had passed since Dr. Jiwoo joined their effort. The Guardian License petition was almost complete, filled with data, behavioral analysis, and expert testimony. The pups had been documented extensively, their intelligence and loyalty proven beyond any doubt. Everything was ready for submission to the Station Council in 3 more days, just before the scheduled inspection. Minji allowed herself to hope. Maybe impossibly this would work. Maybe she could save them. She was working in Section 9 of the environmental systems when the alarm started. The sound was deafening, echoing through the metal corridors. Red emergency lights flashed overhead. Minji's communicator immediately filled with urgent messages. Critical failure in Agricultural Dome 4. Toxic gas leak. All personnel evacuate adjacent sections immediately. Her blood went cold. Agricultural Dome 4 was the largest food production area on the station. If the cooling systems failed there, the chemical fertilizers would break down and release poisonous gas. The dome could be sealed to contain it, but the automated systems that would normally handle the isolation had been undergoing maintenance. More messages flooded in. Airlock malfunction. Manual override required. 3 personnel trapped in contaminated zone. Minji ran toward the dome, her training overriding her fear. Other technicians were already there, but the scene was chaos. Taehyun, her supervisor, was coordinating the response. His face was grim as he looked at the schematics on a portable display. The main airlock is jammed, he told the assembled team. We cannot get to the manual override from here. Someone needs to go through the ventilation shafts. Who is trapped inside? Minji asked. Daehyun himself was supposed to be doing the inspection, another technician said. But he sent 3 junior technicians instead at the last minute. They are in there now with maybe 20 minutes of oxygen left in their emergency suits. Minji looked at the shaft entrance. It was a narrow opening, barely wide enough for a person to crawl through. And the shafts were filling with toxic gas. Even with protective gear, the journey would be deadly. The gas would eat through the suit material within minutes. I will go, she said. I am small enough to fit through the collapsed sections. No, Daehyun said immediately. It is a suicide mission. We will find another way. There is no other way. You know it and I know it. Minji was already moving toward the equipment locker, pulling out a protective suit. I can reach the override. I am fast. Hyun appeared at her side, having heard the emergency call. You cannot do this, Minji. The gas concentration is too high. You will not make it back. Those 3 people will die if I do not try. She was pulling on the suit when she heard a sound that stopped her heart, a familiar chittering noise coming from a maintenance access corridor. She turned and saw 3 shapes moving through the shadows. Bami, Dari, and Hanul had escaped from her quarters. In the chaos and emergency, she had not thought to check on them. They must have sensed her distress and found a way out. Now they stood at the edge of the emergency zone, their many eyes fixed on her. No, Minji whispered. Go back, you need to hide. But the pups did not understand or did not care. They saw their human preparing to enter danger, and their instincts told them to protect her. Bami took a step toward the shaft entrance, his nose twitching as he smelled the toxic gas. Several technicians screamed when they saw the Vexari. Security officers reached for their weapons. But before anyone could react, Dr. Jiwoo pushed through the crowd. Do not shoot them, she commanded with authority. Listen to me. Vexari physiology is resistant to most airborne toxins. Their respiratory systems evolved to handle volcanic gases on their homeworld. They can survive in that shaft. Are you insane? Someone shouted. Those are predators, prohibited species. We need to contain them. We need to save 3 lives, Dr. Jiwoo shot back, and these Vexari can do it. Minji understood immediately what Dr. Jiwoo was suggesting. She knelt down in front of the 3 pups, ignoring the frightened crowd around her. Listen to me, she said, speaking clearly and calmly. Those people in there need help. Can you help them? The pups looked at each other, then back at her. Bami chirped, that sound he made when he was excited and ready to work. Minji pulled up a schematic on her tablet, showing them the route through the ventilation system. She did not know if they could understand maps, but she had to try. The override switch is here, she said, pointing. It is a big red button. You need to press it.
Can you do that?
Hanul, the largest pup, approached the tablet and studied it carefully. His head tilted as he examined the layout. Then he looked at Bami and Dari and made a series of clicks and chirps. They were communicating, Minji realized, planning. This is madness, Daehyun said, but he was watching the pups with something like wonder in his eyes. They are animals. They cannot understand complex instructions. They are not just animals, Minji said. Trust me, please. The pups moved to the shaft entrance. Bami went first, his sleek body disappearing into the narrow space with surprising grace. Daddy followed, then Hanel. They moved with purpose, with coordination. Pack hunters on a mission. The crowd gathered around the monitors, watching the security camera feeds from inside the shafts. The pups navigated the twisted metal corridors with incredible agility. When they reached a collapsed section, they worked together to squeeze through gaps that no human could have managed. The toxic gas swirled around them, thick and yellow, but they showed no signs of distress. Their mucous membranes are filtering the toxins, Dr. Jiwoo explained, watching the feeds intently. Vexari evolved to hunt in hostile environments. This is actually less dangerous for them than their natural habitat would be. The pups reached the contaminated zone, where the 3 technicians were trapped. On the monitors, Minji could see the humans huddled together, their oxygen running dangerously low. They looked up in terror as 3 juvenile predators emerged from the ventilation shaft. But the pups did not attack. Instead, Hanul positioned himself near the fallen debris, using his body to shield the humans from collapsing metal. Dari stood guard, his eyes scanning for danger, and Bami continued forward, moving toward the manual override panel that Minji had shown him. The button was high on the wall, designed for tall species. Bami jumped once, twice, but could not reach it. He made a frustrated sound. Then Dari moved underneath him, crouching low. Hanel took position beside Dari. Bami understood immediately. He climbed onto Dari's back, then onto Hanul's shoulders, creating a living tower. From his elevated position, Bami stretched upward and pressed his paw against the large red button. The manual override engaged. The emergency airlock began to cycle open with a grinding sound. Fresh air rushed in, and the trapped technicians gasped in relief. But the structural damage was more severe than anyone had realized. The rush of air destabilized the weakened supports. Metal groaned and began to fall. The technicians tried to run, but they were weak from oxygen deprivation and moving too slowly. The 3 pups reacted instantly. Dari grabbed one technician by the suit collar and dragged her toward safety with surprising strength. Hanel pushed another technician forward, using his bulk to shelter the human from falling debris. Bami positioned himself between the 3rd technician and a collapsing support beam, taking the impact on his own body. The pup cried out in pain, a sound that tore through Minji's heart. But he did not move. He held his position, protecting the human until Hyun and other security officers could rush in and pull everyone to safety. The 3 technicians emerged from the dome, coughing but alive. The Vexari pups followed, their gray fur covered in dust and chemicals. Bami was limping, favoring his left front leg where the beam had struck him, but his eyes immediately found Minji in the crowd and he limped toward her. She ran to meet them, dropping to her knees and gathering all 3 pups in her arms. They pressed against her, purring loudly, seeking comfort after their ordeal. Bami whimpered softly and Minji checked his injury carefully. It was painful but not serious. He would heal. They saved us, one of the rescued technicians said, her voice shaking. Those creatures saved our lives. We would have died in there. The crowd was silent. Everyone had watched the entire event on the monitors. They had seen 3 young predators, species that were feared throughout the galaxy, risk their own lives to save humans they had never met. They had seen intelligence, cooperation, and courage. Daehyun approached slowly. He looked at Minji, then at the pups, then back at Minji. You have been hiding them all this time. Yes, Minji admitted. There was no point in denying it now. You violated station regulations. You put everyone at risk. I know. Daehyun was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Bami, who was still pressed against Minji's side despite his injury. That one took a hit that was meant for Technician Soman. He knew it would hurt him, and he did it anyway. They are good, Minji said simply. They were always good. I just needed everyone else to see it. Station security arrived to secure the scene. The emergency was over, but a different crisis was beginning. Word of the Vexari pups was spreading through the entire station. Some people were calling for immediate euthanization. Others were defending them, ESPE. The research wing of Harmony 7 Station was different from the areas where Minji usually worked. Everything was cleaner, quieter, more organized. Scientists and researchers moved through the corridors with purpose, carrying data tablets and speaking in low voices about their projects. Minji felt out of place in her technician's uniform, but Hyun walked beside her with the confidence of someone who belonged everywhere. They had spent 2 days planning this meeting. 2 days of Minji's 3-week deadline already gone. The inspection was in 19 days now, and they had made no real progress. Everything depended on Dr. Jiwoo and whether she would be willing to help them. "Are you sure about this?" Hyun asked as they approached the doctor's lab. "Once we tell her, there is no going back." "I am sure," Minji said, though her hands were shaking slightly. "We need an expert. She is the best xenobiologist on the station." The lab door slid open when Hyun pressed the chime. Inside was a space filled with screens, scientific equipment, and specimens in preservation containers. Dr. Jiwoo sat at a workstation, studying something on a holographic display. She was in her mid-30s with sharp eyes and an expression of intense concentration. "Yes?" she said without looking up. "If this is about the requisition forms, I already submitted them twice." "Dr. Jiwoo, we need to speak with you about a sensitive matter," Hyun said. His security officer's voice carried authority that made her look up. She studied them both carefully. "I know you. You are the security officer from Level 7, and you are the environmental technician who keeps requesting articles from my research database." She looked at Minji with interest. "You read my paper on predator cognition 3 times according to the access logs." "Yes," Minji admitted. "It was very helpful." "Helpful for what?" "Environmental systems do not usually overlap with xenobiology." Dr. Jiwoo stood up and crossed her arms. "What is this really about?" Minji and Hyun exchanged glances. They had agreed that honesty was the only approach that might work. "We need your help with a situation that involves Vexari specimens," Minji said. Dr. Jiwoo's expression changed immediately. "Vexari, there are no Vexari on this station. They are classified as prohibited life forms." "That is correct," Hyun said. "Officially, there are no Vexari on this station." The silence that followed was heavy. Dr. Jiwoo's eyes moved between them, understanding dawning. "Unofficially? I found 3 juvenile Vexari 4 weeks ago," Minji said. "They were abandoned in a cargo container, starving. I could not let them die." Dr. Jiwoo sat down slowly. "You are telling me that you have been hiding 3 Vexari pups on this station for a month? Do you understand how insane that is? How dangerous?" "They are not dangerous," Minji said. "Not the way you think. I have been training them, bonding with them. They are intelligent and gentle, and they trust me completely. They are juvenile predators whose instincts will become uncontrollable as they mature," Dr. Jiwoo said. "I have studied Vexari behavioral patterns. Adult Vexari have killed more sentient beings than any other species in the known galaxy. Because they are feared and hunted," Minji argued, "because no one has ever tried to understand them or work with them peacefully." "What if we are wrong about them? What if they are capable of more than just violence?" Dr. Jiwoo looked at her for a long moment. "You're either very brave or very foolish." "Probably both." She turned to Hyun. "And you are helping her?" "A security officer? I am trying to find a legal solution before this becomes a crisis," Hyun said. "We discovered that guardian licenses exist for prohibited species. If we can prove that Minji has formed a genuine bond with these creatures and can guarantee public safety, there might be a chance to save them." "A guardian license for Vexari? That has never been approved. The council would never allow it." "But it is possible," Minji pressed. "Legally possible. We need someone who can document the bond, who can provide scientific evidence that these pups are different from what everyone expects, someone whose expertise the council would have to respect." "You want me to risk my career and reputation to help you keep 3 illegal predators?" Dr. Jiwoo said flatly. "Yes," Minji said simply. Dr. Jiwoo laughed, but there was no humor in it. "This is the most ridiculous request I have ever received. The answer should be no. The answer should be that I report you immediately to station security." "But," Hyun prompted, "but I am a scientist, and the idea of studying an actual human Vexari bond, if such a thing truly exists, is professionally fascinating." She stood up and walked to her equipment. "I want to see them. I want to observe these pups and document their behavior. If what you are saying is true, if they really have bonded with you in a way that defies current understanding of Vexari psychology, then this could be groundbreaking research. Does that mean you will help us? Minji asked, hope rising in her chest. It means I will examine the evidence before deciding. Take me to them. Now. The three of them made their way back to the residential levels using maintenance corridors to avoid crowded areas. Minji's heart pounded the entire way. She was about to show her secret to another person, expanding the circle of people who knew. Each person she told increased the risk of exposure. Inside her quarters, Minji approached the locker slowly. They will be nervous, she told Dr. Jiwoo. They have only ever known me and recently Hyun. New people scare them. Understood. I will maintain a safe distance. Minji opened the locker door. 3 sets of eyes looked out cautiously. The pups had grown again in the past week. They were now the size of medium dogs, their bodies muscular and sleek. Their multiple eyes scanned the room and fixed on the newcomer with obvious suspicion. It is okay, Minji said softly. She is a friend. Come say hello. Bami emerged first as he always did, but instead of running to Minji, he positioned himself between her and Dr. Jiwoo, his body language protective. Dari and Hanul flanked him on either side. They were showing pack behavior, Minji realized, protecting their family member from a perceived threat. Dr. Jiwoo watched this with intense interest. She pulled out a small device and began recording. Fascinating. They are displaying coordinated defensive positioning. That level of social cooperation usually does not develop in Vexari until they are much older. They learn fast, Minji said. She knelt down and the pups immediately relaxed, moving to her side. Watch this. Bami sit, the pup sat. Dari stay. The second pup froze in place. Hanul come. The third pup approached and pressed his head against her hand. Dr. Jiwoo moved closer, slowly, documenting everything. May I approach them? Let them approach you, Minji suggested. Sit on the floor and extend your hand palm down. Do not make direct eye contact. That is a challenge in their body language. The doctor did as instructed. She sat down carefully and held out her hand. The pups watched her intently. After a long moment, Bami took a tentative step forward. Then another. He sniffed her hand carefully, his nose working. Finally, he pressed his head against her palm, allowing the touch. His fur is incredibly soft, Dr. Jiwoo said, her voice filled with wonder. And he is purring. I did not know Vexari could purr. There is a lot about them that is not in the research papers, Minji said, because no one has ever tried to understand them like this. Dr. Jiwoo spent the next hour examining the pups, running non-invasive tests, documenting their behavior. She observed how they interacted with each other, how they responded to commands, how they showed affection. She recorded their vocalizations, their body language, their problem-solving abilities when Minji gave them simple puzzles. Finally, she sat back and looked at Minji with an expression of amazement. This should not be possible. Everything we know about Vexari says that they are solitary hunters who only tolerate their own kind during mating season. They should be aggressive, territorial, impossible to train. But these three are displaying pack bonding, social cooperation, and attachment behaviors that rival Earth canines. So, you believe me now? Minji asked. I believe that something unprecedented is happening here. Whether it is replicable, whether it will last as they mature, whether it can be considered safe, those are different questions. Dr. Jiwoo pulled up data on her tablet. But I will help you. Not just because this could be revolutionary research, but because if we are wrong about Vexari, if they are capable of this kind of bonding, then killing these pups would be a tragedy. Hyun, who had been standing guard by the door, spoke up. What do we need to do for the Guardian license petition? We need comprehensive behavioral documentation, Dr. Jiwoo said, already making notes. Video evidence of the bond, neurological scans showing attachment patterns, safety protocols and contingency plans, expert testimony, and most importantly, we need to demonstrate that this bond will hold even as the Vexari mature. That last part is impossible to prove, Hyun said. They are still juveniles, which is why this petition will likely fail, Dr. Jiwoo admitted. The council will argue that we cannot predict how they will behave as adults. They will say the risk is too great, that one incident could result in deaths. Minji felt her hope crashing down. So there is no point in trying? I did not say that. I said it will likely fail, but likely is not certain, and even a small chance is worth pursuing, especially when the alternative is certain death for these three. Doctor. Minji barely slept that night. She lay on her bed while the three pups curled around her feet, their warmth comforting but not enough to quiet her racing thoughts. The inspection notice felt like a death sentence. In 7 days, an inspector would open her locker, and everything would end. The pups would be taken away and killed. She would face criminal charges. Years of work, her entire career would be destroyed. But more than that, these 3 lives that had come to trust her would be ended, because the galaxy had decided their species was too dangerous to exist. She spent the hours before dawn, searching through galactic law databases on her personal terminal. The screen's blue light illuminated her face as she read through page after page of regulations, looking for anything that might help. Most of what she found was discouraging. Prohibited life forms could not be kept by civilians under any circumstances. The penalties for violation included imprisonment, massive fines, and permanent exile from Federation space. Then, buried deep in a subsection about exotic animal handling, she found something, a single paragraph that mentioned guardian licenses. If an individual could prove they had formed a genuine bond with a prohibited species and could guarantee public safety, they could petition for special permission to keep the creature. The requirements were strict, and the approval rate was less than 1%. No human had ever been granted a license for a Vexari, but it was something. A small chance was better than no chance at all. Minji was so focused on her reading that she did not hear her door chime at first. When it sounded again, more insistent, she jerked upright. The pups immediately went on alert, their ears swiveling toward the door. Minji quickly gestured for them to hide, and all 3 scrambled into the locker with practiced silence. She checked the door's screen. Her heart sank. It was Hyun. There was no avoiding this. She opened the door just wide enough to stand in the gap, blocking his view of the room. "It is early," she said. "I could not sleep," Hyun replied. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. "I need to talk to you." "Can I come in?" "Now is not a good time. Minji, please. This is important." She saw the determination in his eyes and knew she could not put him off any longer. Either she trusted him or she did not. Taking a deep breath, she stepped aside and let him enter. Hyun walked into the room and looked around. His trained eyes took in the details. The lack of personal items, the empty shelves, the oversized locker against the wall. His gaze fixed on the locker. "What is in there?" "Hyun, I need you to promise me something first." "I cannot promise anything until I know what is happening. Promise me you will listen to everything before you make a decision. Promise me you will see them before you judge." His expression became concerned. "See who?" "Minji, what have you done?" She walked to the locker and placed her hand on the door. Her fingers trembled slightly. "Do you remember 3 weeks ago when that abandoned container was found in Cargo Bay 12? Yes, it was empty, scheduled for disposal. It was not empty." Understanding dawned in Hyun's eyes, followed quickly by alarm. "No, Minji, no. Tell me you did not." She opened the locker door. 3 pairs of multifaceted eyes stared out at Hyun. Bami, Dari, and Hanul sat perfectly still, watching this new human with cautious intelligence. They were larger than they had been 3 weeks ago, clearly visible as Vexari now. There was no mistaking what they were. Hyun took a step back, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. "Those are Vexari. Juvenile Vexari. In your quarters. Do you understand what you have done?" "Yes," Minji said calmly. "I saved their lives. You violated about 15 different regulations. You put everyone on this station at risk. These things grow into apex predators. They are not things. They are intelligent beings. And they were babies, Hyun. Starving, abandoned babies who would have died alone in that container if I had not helped them." Hyun looked at the pups again. Bami tilted his head, studying the security officer with curious eyes. The gesture was almost puppy-like, innocent. "They need to be reported. You know that." "I am sorry, but there is no choice here." "There is always a choice," Minji said. "Watch." She knelt down and held out her hand. "Bami, come." The smallest pup emerged from the locker and walked to her, pressing his head against her palm. She scratched behind his ears, and he made that purring sound that had become so familiar. "Dari, Hanil, come greet our guest gently." The other 2 pups approached slowly. They did not go to Hyun, respecting his caution, but they sat at Minji's feet and looked up at him. Their body language was open, curious, not aggressive. They were showing submission, waiting to see if this new human was a threat or a friend. I have been training them, Minji explained. They understand commands. They know how to behave. They are not the mindless killers that the regulations describe. They are smart, Hyun, really smart, and they are capable of forming bonds. Hyun watched as the three pups interacted with Minji. They clearly adored her. Bami kept looking up at her face, seeking approval. Dari brought her a piece of fabric, offering it like a gift. Hanil positioned himself between her and Hyun, protective but not aggressive. This does not change what they are, Hyun said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty, or what they will become. No, but it changes how we see them. Humans were predators too once. We still are in some ways, but we are also capable of more than just hunting and killing. Maybe Vexari are the same. Hyun sat down heavily on the edge of Minji's bed. He ran his hands through his hair. My sister once rescued an illegal exotic creature. She thought she was doing the right thing too. She was arrested and spent 6 months in detention. Her career was destroyed. She never recovered from it. I know this is asking a lot, Minji said quietly. You have your duty. Your Honor, I understand if you need to report this. I should report this. I should have reported it the moment I suspected something was wrong. But you did not. No, I did not. They sat in silence for several minutes. The pups sensed the tension and remained quiet, their many eyes watching the two humans. Finally, Hyun spoke again. Show me this guardian license thing you were reading about. Hope flared in Minji's chest. She brought up the information on her terminal and showed him the relevant passages. Hyun read carefully, his security training making him analyze every word. This is a huge risk, he said. If we try for this and fail, the outcome will be worse than if you had just reported them immediately, and the chances of success are almost zero. Almost zero is not zero. Minji, they will never approve this. A human with Vexari pups? The council will laugh at the petition before denying it. Maybe, but I have to try. I cannot just let them die without fighting for them. Hyun looked at the pups again. Bami had crept closer to him, curious about this serious-voiced human. The pup sat just out of reach, head tilted, waiting. If I help you with this, Hyun said slowly, I am risking everything too. My career, my reputation, possibly my freedom. I know. I would not blame you if you walked away. My sister, after she was released from detention, she told me something. She said the creature she tried to save died anyway, and that was the worst part. Not the punishment, not the lost career, but knowing that her sacrifice had not mattered in the end. I am sorry about your sister. I am too. But she also told me that she would do it again. That some things are worth the risk even when the risk is everything you have. Minji felt tears forming in her eyes. Are you saying what I think you are saying? Hyun sighed deeply. I am saying that I will give you 3 weeks. If we cannot find a legal solution in that time, before the inspection happens, I will have to report this. I will give you every chance, Minji. But I will not let this become a disaster that hurts innocent people. 3 weeks. That is enough. It has to be enough. We need help. Someone who understands xenobiology and can document the bond you have formed with these creatures. Someone who knows the legal system. I might know someone, Minji said. Dr. Jiwoo in the research wing. She published a paper on predator species cognition last year. I read it while researching Vexari behavior. Will she help us? I do not know. But we have to ask. Hyun stood up and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned back to look at the pups one more time. Bami had moved closer, now sitting right at Hyun's feet. The pup looked up at him with those strange, multifaceted eyes. Slowly, carefully, Hyun reached down and touched the top of Bami's head. The pup's eyes closed and that deep purring sound filled the room. They feel like velvet, Hyun said, surprised. I expected them to be rougher. There is a lot about them that is not what you would expect, Minji said. Hyun pulled his hand back. 3 weeks. Starting now. And Minji, if this goes wrong, I will not be able to protect you from the consequences. I know. Thank you for trying anyway. After Hyun left, Minji sat on the floor and let the pups climb all over her. They sensed that something important had happened, that the danger had passed for now. They were happy, playful, full of the energy that young creatures always had. Minji held Bami close and whispered into his soft fur. We have a chance now. Just a small one, but it is real. I will not let you down. The pup looked at her with complete trust, and Minji prayed that she could be worthy of it. 3 weeks had passed since Minji found the pups. Her life had become a careful dance of routine and deception. She woke at 5 in the morning, an hour before her shift started, to feed Bami, Dari, and Hanul. The pups had grown noticeably. They were now the size of large house cats, their bodies filling out with healthy muscle beneath their sleek gray fur. Minji had moved most of her belongings out of the locker to give them more room. The thermal blankets had become a proper nest, and she had rigged a small ventilation system to keep the air fresh. It was not perfect, but it worked. The pups seemed content, though she could see their restlessness growing. They were meant to run and hunt, not hide in a metal box. She opened the locker door and was immediately greeted by 3 eager faces. Bami, the smallest, climbed onto her lap first. He always did. Dari and Hanul pressed against her sides, their purring filling the small room with a sound like distant thunder. Minji scratched behind their ears, feeling the strange texture of their skin where multiple eyes clustered. "Good morning, troublemakers," she whispered. "Hungry?" They understood the word now. All 3 sets of ears perked up. Minji pulled out the protein rations she had smuggled from the cafeteria. She had been claiming they were for meal prep, storing them for later. The cafeteria staff had started giving her odd looks, but no one had questioned it yet. The pups ate with better manners now. In the first days, they had been desperate and savage. Now they waited for her signal before eating. They took turns. They cleaned up after themselves, licking the container until it shined. Minji marveled at their intelligence every day. After feeding them, she spent 20 minutes on training exercises. She had started simple with sit and stay. Now they understood dozens of commands. She taught them using hand signals as well as words. Knowing that verbal communication might not always be possible, they learned faster than any Earth animal could. Sometimes she wondered if they were actually understanding her language or just reading her intentions. "Bami, quiet," she said, holding one finger to her lips. The pup immediately stopped his purring and became still. "Good boy. Dari, come." The middle pup approached and sat at her feet. "Hanul, hide." The largest pup retreated to the back of the locker and pressed himself flat against the blankets, becoming almost invisible in the shadows. These were not just tricks. These were survival skills. If anyone discovered them, every second of obedience might mean the difference between life and death. Her communicator beeped. Time for work. Minji gave each pup a final scratch and closed the locker door. She hated this moment every day, seeing their disappointed faces as the door sealed them in darkness. But it was necessary. The environmental systems bay was busy when she arrived. Her supervisor, Daehyun, was reviewing the day's assignments on a large display screen. He was a serious man in his 40s, efficient and fair, but not warm. He nodded at Minji as she approached. "You have Section 7 today," he said. "Air filtration units need calibration. Should take most of the shift." "Understood," Minji replied. Daehyun looked at her for a moment longer than necessary. "You look tired. Everything okay?" "Just not sleeping well," Minji said, which was true. She spent half her nights researching Vexari biology and galactic law, looking for any possible way to protect the pups. "Take care of yourself," Daehyun said. It almost sounded like concern. "Can't have my best technician burning out." Minji worked through the morning, her hands performing familiar tasks while her mind wandered. She thought about the pups constantly. Were they okay? Were they too hot? Too cold? Were they scared? She checked her chronometer every few minutes, counting down to her lunch break. When the break finally came, she hurried back to her quarters. The corridors were busy with other station personnel, and she had to force herself to walk normally, not run. She passed a security officer in the hallway and her heart jumped, but he just nodded at her and continued on his way. Inside her quarters, she quickly opened the locker. 3 pairs of eyes blinked at her happily. They had been waiting. Bami made a small chirping sound, which she had learned meant he was excited. She let them out for a few minutes, knowing it was risky but unable to deny them. They stretched their bodies, their spines flexing in ways that no Earth animal could match. She fed them again and played with them briefly. Dari brought her a piece of thermal blanket he had torn off, dropping it at her feet like a gift. She pretended to throw it, and all 3 pups tensed, ready to chase. But she had taught them not to make noise during the day, and they controlled themselves, waiting for her actual command. "Not now," she said softly. "Tonight." I promise, they seemed to understand disappointment too. Their ears drooped slightly. Minji felt guilty, but there was no other choice. She put them back in the locker and returned to work. The afternoon passed slowly. Minji was calibrating a particularly stubborn filtration unit when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "You have been acting strange lately." She turned to find Hyun standing there. He was a human security officer, one of the few on the station. They had become friends over the past year, sharing meals in the cafeteria and complaining about station bureaucracy. He was a good man, honest and dedicated to his job, which made him dangerous to her now. "Strange how?" Minji asked, trying to keep her voice casual. "You are eating alone now. You leave immediately after your shift. You are requisitioning 3 times your normal food allowance." Hyun crossed his arms. "And you have scratches on your hands." Minji looked down at her hands. He was right. Small scratches covered her fingers and palms from when the pups played too roughly. She had tried to hide them, but Hyun was observant. "I am just busy," she said. "Working on a personal project." "What kind of project?" "Nothing interesting, just research." Hyun studied her face. They had known each other long enough that he could read her moods. "You are lying to me." "I am not lying. I am just not telling you everything." "That is the same thing, Minji." She felt panic rising in her chest. If Hyun suspected something and decided to investigate, he would find the pups. He would have to report them. It was his job. Their friendship would not matter against station regulations. "Please," she said quietly, "just trust me. I am not doing anything that will hurt anyone." Hyun's expression softened slightly. "Are you in trouble?" "No, not yet. That is not reassuring, I know. But I cannot explain right now. Just give me some time, please." They stood in silence for a long moment. Finally, Hyun sighed. "You are my friend. I will give you time. But Minji, if you are doing something dangerous or illegal, you need to tell me. I can help." "I know," she said. "Thank you." He left, but Minji knew this was not over. Hyun was too smart and too thorough to let this go. She had maybe a few days before he started digging deeper. That evening, after her shift ended, Minji returned to her quarters to find a surprise. Someone had left a notice on her door. It was a standard form, announcing a surprise safety inspection scheduled for the following week. All personnel were required to have their quarters ready for inspection, including all lockers and storage areas. Minji felt her blood turn cold. She had 1 week to find a solution. 1 week before someone would open her locker and discover 3 juvenile Vexari that should not exist. Inside her quarters, she opened the locker and the pups tumbled out, happy to see her. They did not understand the danger they were in. They trusted her completely to keep them safe. Bammy climbed into her lap and looked up at her with his many eyes. She could see her reflection in them, distorted but recognizable. "You are going to get me fired," she whispered to him. But she was smiling despite the fear, despite the impossible situation. Because looking at these 3 creatures that the galaxy called monsters, all she could see were innocents who deserved a chance at life. She just needed to figure out how to give it to them. The cargo bay of Harmony 7 station smelled like metal and recycled air. Minji walked between the tall stacks of shipping containers with her toolkit in hand. She had been working on this station for 2 years now, fixing environmental systems and keeping the air breathable for thousands of beings from dozens of different worlds. It was honest work, and she enjoyed the quiet moments like these when she could walk through the massive bay alone. The sound stopped her in her tracks. It was faint, almost like a whisper, but definitely there. A chittering noise, high-pitched and afraid. Minji tilted her head and listened. There it was again, coming from an old container near the back wall. The container had been sitting there for weeks, marked with red tape that meant it was scheduled for disposal. She approached slowly, her boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. The chittering grew louder. Something was alive in there. Something scared. Minji checked her handheld scanner. The container showed no official contents, no manifest, nothing. It had been abandoned. Her fingers worked the manual release on the container door. The locks were old, but still functional. With a hiss of stale air, the door swung open. Minji pointed her flashlight inside. 3 pairs of eyes stared back at her. Then 6 pairs, then 9. Her breath caught in her throat. The creatures were small, huddled together in the corner of the container. They had sleek gray fur that looked soft despite being matted and dirty. Multiple eyes blinked at her from angular faces. Their bodies were thin, too thin, with ribs showing through their skin. Retractable claws scraped weakly against the metal floor as they tried to press themselves further into the corner. Minji knew exactly what they were. Every human who worked on galactic stations went through extensive training about dangerous species. These were Vexari pups, juvenile specimens of one of the most feared predator species in known space. Adult Vexari could grow to the size of Earth bears, with intelligence that rivaled most sapient species and hunting instincts that made them nearly unstoppable. They were classified as prohibited life forms on civilian stations. Station protocol was clear: immediate containment and euthanization. No exceptions. No appeals, but these were babies. Starving, abandoned babies who looked at her with terrified eyes. The smallest one made a sound, a weak mewling that reminded Minji of a kitten. It tried to crawl toward her, then collapsed, too weak to move. The other two pressed against it, trying to share warmth, trying to protect their sibling. Minji's training told her to close the door and call security. Her heart told her something different. She thought about what would happen if she reported this. Security would come within minutes. They would drag these creatures out and kill them efficiently, professionally, without mercy. These babies would die alone and afraid, just like they had been living. She made her decision in that moment. It was stupid. It was dangerous. It was against every rule the station had. But she could not walk away. Minji took off her jacket and laid it on the floor of the container. She spoke softly, the way she used to speak to scared animals back on Earth. The words did not matter, only the tone. Slowly, carefully, she reached for the smallest pup. It was too weak to resist. She wrapped it in her jacket, feeling how light it was, how its rapid heartbeat fluttered against her hands. The other two watched her with those strange, multifaceted eyes. She could see intelligence there, even in creatures so young. They were deciding whether to trust her or attack her. Minji kept her movements slow and calm. She reached for the second pup, then the third. They allowed it, perhaps too exhausted to fight, perhaps sensing that she meant no harm. Getting them to her quarters was the hardest part. Minji used maintenance corridors that she knew would be empty during the shift change. She held the bundle of pups close to her chest, hidden under her work coat. They were surprisingly quiet, as if they understood the need for stealth. Her quarters were small, just a bedroom and bathroom that all junior technicians received. But her locker was oversized, a benefit of her position that required her to store extra equipment. Minji opened it and quickly moved her tools to make space. She lined the bottom with thermal blankets from her emergency supplies. The pups huddled together as soon as she placed them inside. They looked at her, those many eyes blinking in the dim light. Minji found protein rations in her food supplies and broke them into small pieces. The pups ate desperately, nearly choking in their hunger. She gave them water in a shallow container. They drank it all. For an hour, Minji sat on her floor and watched them. Now that they had eaten, they seemed stronger. They explored the locker carefully, sniffing everything with small noses. The smallest one, the one that had tried to crawl to her first, kept looking back at her. Finally, it approached her hand and pressed its head against her fingers. The fur was soft. The purring sound it made was gentle. Minji felt tears in her eyes and did not know why. Maybe because something so small and innocent was considered a monster. Maybe because she had just thrown away her career and possibly her freedom to save 3 creatures that the galaxy said should not exist. She gave them names that night: Bami, Dari, and Hanul. They were Korean words from her grandmother's stories, words that meant night, moon, and sky. The names felt right somehow. Over the next days, Minji established a routine. She woke early to feed them before her shift. She visited during her lunch break, bringing food that she claimed was for herself. She spent her evenings with them, watching as they grew stronger, as their fur became clean and shiny, as their eyes grew bright with health and curiosity. They learned fast. Faster than any animal she had ever known. Within a week, they came when she called their names. Within 2 weeks, they understood basic commands: sit, stay, quiet. They played with each other like earth puppies, tumbling and wrestling. But Minji noticed their claws, their teeth, the way they moved with a grace that spoke of future danger. She researched Vexari biology in her spare time, using the station's database but being careful not to trigger any security flags. What she learned fascinated her. Vexari were not mindless killers. They were pack hunters with complex social structures. They formed deep emotional bonds. They were capable of loyalty, of love, of sacrifice. The galaxy feared them because they were efficient predators. But that was only part of what they were. Minji knew she could not keep this secret forever. The pups were growing. Soon they would need more space, more food, more than she could provide alone. But for now, in these quiet moments when they curled up around her and purred with contentment, she allowed herself to hope that somehow, impossibly, there might be a way forward. She just had to find it before anyone discovered what she had done.